Hello, and welcome to Mystic Dog Mama, the podcast for soul led dog mamas, where you'll discover how to best nourish your dog and yourself, mind, body, and soul. I'm your host, Dr. Alexia Meller. How are you doing? How are you enjoying your summer or your winter, depending on where you are in the world? In a couple of weeks, I'm going to switch things up just a little bit over the dog days of summer here in the Northern Hemisphere. I'll be sharing some shorter solo episodes with you where I'll talk about some of the things that you guys are asking me or mentioning that you're curious about when it comes to nourishing your dogs and yourselves, mind, body, and soul. So if there's something you'd like me to talk about in one of these shorter episodes, just send me a message on Instagram at Mystic Dog Mama and let me know. Well, today's episode is a really special Spotlight Series episode where I bring on other Mystic Dog Mamas to talk about their journeys and their stories with their dogs. My guest today is Barbara Thompson, who I am grateful to say has become a friend of mine after we first met through the podcasting community. Barbara came to her own spiritual awakening experience rather unexpectedly as a result of her sweet soul dog, a pug named Floss. In our conversation, Barbara shares how Floss and then her dog Maisie catalyzed a deep and transformative personal growth process that asked Barbara to go through the dark trenches and then come out the other side a new person. From being a former bodybuilder with a less than healthy relationship to her body and food, to now being an inspiration as a licensed therapist and nutritionist, Barbara's dogs, or her girls as she lovingly calls them, have been her support the whole way. They've also supported her clients by serving as therapy dogs. And now she and her gorgeous little puppy, Tully, are embarking on a new journey towards health together as I help support them in learning how to feed Tully a fresh food diet. This is such a beautiful chat, and we cover a lot of ground that I think many of us can relate to. Just as a heads up, though, we do touch on some sensitive subjects of having battled with suicidal thoughts and with eating disorders. So if that's triggering to you, you may want to skip this one. Again, I absolutely encourage you to seek the appropriate help that you need if this is the case. As I mentioned, I am helping Barbara to better nourish Tully by teaching her how to feed Tully a fresh food diet. If you are interested in learning how to feed your own dog a fresh diet, or if you have a dog with a health condition and want some support with a fresh therapeutic diet, or you're already a fresh feeder and you just want a little bit of guidance on how you can make your dog's diet even better, then reach out to me on Instagram at Mystic Dog Mama. I'm putting together a new course and I'm opening up some spaces for canine nutrition consults and would love to support you. Like I said, just DM me on Instagram at Mystic Dog Mama for more information. Okay, on that note, let's go. Hi, Barbara. Thank you so much for joining me on the Mystic Dog Mama podcast today. I am so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, this is going to be a lot of fun because we've had a few chats already. I've been on your podcast, which is really fun, and we've had chats outside of it, and there's so much we could talk about. But I just would love to kind of share with the audience how you and I have had this really lovely crossover between looking at holistic ideas of nourishment and taking care of ourselves, mind, body, and soul, and how our dogs have been a big part of that journey, both personally and professionally and spiritually for us. So I'm excited to get into that kind of intertwining of our little canine companions and how we are being in the world. So I think it's going to be a fun conversation today.
I think it is. Yeah. It's going to be good. I hope people can take something, the journey that I've been on with my dogs and with myself is something that even 10 years ago, if you'd said to me, this is how you'd feel about yourself, this is how you feel about your body, this is where you'll be in your life, you'll be living in a different country, I don't know if I would have believed anyone.
So where did that journey start for you? What did that kind of look like?
The journey started when I'm from New Zealand, from Auckland, and in 2016, I have to think back, 2016 in September, I decided to move to Australia. And at that time, it was for a partner, and I brought my two little dogs with me. So it was like a little family adventure. And at that time, I had a little pug called Floss and a Bichon Shih Tzu called Maisie. And we all actually, how bizarre is this? We all went on the same flight. So I actually I purposely went on the same flight as them. I actually watched them get boarded onto the plane, and that was very, it's one of those things like don't look, don't look, don't look. And then when I saw this kind of beaten up van do a little bit of a side skid, it literally was on the tarmac, it did this little handbrake side skid, and this Islander guy just lifted the boot up. And I was like, I knew the crates because we'd done so many hours of crate training. So as soon as he lifted the boot up, I was like, there's my girls. And I was like, I got a window seat, and I was like, don't look. Even when I sat in the seat, something said to me, okay, you got a window seat. Obviously, you want to see the girls. Don't look because you may see something that you don't want to see. So what does Barbara do? I'm looking for my girls. I wonder if they're on the flight. Wonder how they're going. And then I saw this van pull up and the two crates there, because they had to be in separate crates, and my heart just sunk and I just started to cry my eyes out. And I was like, oh, my girl, are they okay? And I saw him kind of do a toss. He kind of, when and he kind of tossed one up and then swung and put the other one on. And then I saw them wobble going up the conveyor belt. And I was just like, because I had to sign a waiver before I went with this transport company. And it said, by any chance, if the animals get out on the tarmac, we have permission to shoot them. So I was kind of in this, it makes sense. It's an airport. If an animal runs and they can't get it, which is really weird for New Zealand, Australia, because we're not really too gun heavy. But so that was really hard for me. So as I was watching these crates wobble up, I was just like, just stay in there, just stay in there, And then and it was just that flight for me. You think about when you're on a flight, there's all the wings noises and everything. And I was like, oh, I hope they're okay. Are they all right? The whole flight. And then when we got off, I could basically go around to customs and get them straight away. And that was the only reason why one of the reasons why I moved to Australia, and they came with me. I was not bringing them, but the fact was I could get them the same day was like the game changer for me. So we came to Australia. And then from that, my life really, really changed in a big way when Floss passed away. That was the biggest spiritual, a lot of things happened when I moved to Australia, but it was that very, all of a sudden out of the blue, the vet said, I can't let you take her home today. And luckily Maisie was with me, and that was my first real spiritual encounter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What was that like for you? What happened?
You think about it. She is more than a dog. I always knew she had human, human tendencies. She had this ability. She was a rescue dog. So originally she went to a drug house home, and originally, it's funny how things happen, isn't it? Because she wasn't my dog. I bought her for my mum's 50th because my mum had always wanted a pug. And I went on to the New Zealand version of Gumtree, which is called Trade Me. Oh, maybe like eBay type of thing. And I went on and I saw Floss, but the breeder who got her back said she has to have eye drops, cyclosporin drops in her eyes for the rest of her life because her eyes were so dry. And so I rang my mum and kind of broke the surprise and said, look, I think I'm getting you a pug. She was full price. This is the thing. She was full price of a normal pug. She was a year old. She had eye conditions. But I said, Mum, here's a pug. Would you prepared to pay for her upkeep? And my mum was like, yeah, great. And I remember first meeting Floss, I didn't like her at all, which is so weird because her and I like this. I walked into this breeder's place and it was a bit dingy and smelly, and there were so many dogs there. And when you walk and you have your hands down by your sides, Floss kept jumping up and nipping my fingers, and I don't like nippy dogs. And I was like, oh, go away. And so at the time, my ex-husband was like holding her, and it was weird. All I remember from that event was I was holding a Griffin dog because it was kind of cute as I was paying the money, and it kept farting on me. That's all I remember was this moment where I just had this dog that kept doing these farts. And I was like, I just couldn't get out of that place like fast enough. And anyway, fast forward, Maybe a few months later, my mum rang me and said, I can't afford to have this dog. This dog doesn't like me. It was always your dog anyway. I was like, no, it's not. It was just weird how she was like, she's always your dog. You got her for yourself. Okay. And that moment when I brought her home, I knew something in my life had changed. I knew, and my ex-husband was jealous of the relationship Floss and I had, to the point where he was like, if Floss and I fell off a cliff, who would you save? And I was like, do you actually need, and he was serious asking me this question because he was jealous of our relationship. Floss was a being that no matter where we'd go, would go walking. I'd take her to parties, barbecues with me. Everyone from across the road, oh my God, it's a pug. Oh my God, oh my God. People would come out of like nowhere and be like, can I pet her? Oh, Floss, oh my God. The kids would just, people would be mesmerized. And Floss would just be sitting there going, yeah, you know, I've never seen anything like it. Same thing happened. I thought when I moved to Australia, there's no way. Oh my God, it was worse here. Oh, she's lovely. There's something special about her. And poor Maisie, my other dog, would just stand there going, hi, hi. Like everyone would just ignore her. And it was all about Floss. And she just had this queen bee energy about her. And people were just drawn to her. They wanted to touch her. They thought she was just so fascinating. They were so fascinated by her. And the moment that changed, we were in that vet clinic and I was like, and my cat's decided to scratch on the door. So that's going to be interesting. I can just hear him. So I sat there for what seemed hours, I think it was, just going, the vet said, just call out when you're ready. And I'd never been through, I'd had a cat earlier that the cat just had a heart attack in front of me and died like that. So I had an animal before that passed very suddenly, very quickly, but I hadn't had to make that decision. Okay, now it's time. And I really grappled with that. And I sat there in that room on the floor with Maisie next to me and Floss in my arms. And I was just like, how do you say goodbye to the best thing that's ever happened to you? I was like, how do I say goodbye? And I was just like, this is just horrible. And then in the end, I just said, you're just going to have to come because when's a good time? And then all of a sudden, this vet who had been a vet for like over 20 years, she just broke down. And I went, oh, why are you crying? Like, I'm crying. Why are you crying? And she's like, oh, Floss just told me that she wants to go. Because through this whole time, people go, oh, you see it. I mean, looking back on videos, oh, yeah, she was tired, but I didn't see that. And so when the vet cried and said, Floss told me, I was like, it's a bit weird. Okay. And in that moment, the vet nurse grabbed her and she said, do you want to hold her? And I was like, no, I don't want to hold her because I don't know. This is the biggest loss of my life. I didn't know if I was going to curl up into a ball. I was going to have a fit. I was going to run. I didn't know in that moment how I was going to react. So I got the vet nurse to hold her. And even then, looking back, it's such a Floss way. If you've had dogs that are passed, what kind of vet nurse sits a dog up on her knee? So when you think about it, she's kind of sitting on her knees and she was holding Floss under the armpits, like a pug, you imagine, just sitting. So she was like a human sitting upright. Now looking back, what the hell are these people doing? And now because I've been through it again, they give them a sedation and they do it. But Floss didn't have a sedation. They set her up like this Buddha being. Yeah, so bizarre. Even think about it now. She was sitting up, and the vet said, "Okay, Barbara." And she got the needle, and I swear the needle didn't even, like her little paw, it didn't even touch. It went like this. Well, not even that. And the vet said, "I'm really sorry, Barbara. She's gone." And in that moment, I went, huh? And I'll never forget it. In that moment, Floss and I locked eyes, and we had this, "I love you, I love you." It was just this moment where we both looked at each other, and then all of a sudden I went, oh my God. And it was, if I close my eyes, I can remember it now, because sometimes saying out aloud, I think, did I really see what I saw? And it was her little eyes connecting, saying, I love you. And then all of a sudden it was like, when you blow out a candle and it's white smoke. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden she said, I love you. And then I just saw this white smoke go up to the ceiling. And I went, what? And at the same time that went up, I looked at her, and I always remember the best way. I was like, the best way for me to describe what she looked like was the air out of a balloon.
Right.
Yeah. So at the same time, I saw all the smoke go up to the ceiling, and I was like, what is happening right now? I looked at her, it was her soul, from what I know now. But I looked at her body, and it was like all the air had gone out of her, and she was like, oh, like a balloon. And then they just lay her down on a purple blanket,
Oh my
because I
God.
didn't take anything with me. So she just lay on the purple blanket, and she instantly changed color because she was a fawn pug. And she changed instantly. I'm actually looking at a tissue box now. How weird is this? And the tissue box is like a pale apricot. That's the color she turned. It's like a pale apricot, basically, straight away. And she lay down there. And I remember going, she just lay there peacefully. And I said to the vet, oh, she's such a good girl. Because the vet gave me, she might cry out. And I was like, oh gosh, help me if she cries out. I won't be able to handle that. Or they wee themselves and they poo themselves and they might throw up, or like giving me the rundown of everything. So I was like, okay, I'm prepared. And she lay down gracefully, and I went, Floss, what a lady. She didn't do anything. And then all of a sudden, the vet nurse and I looked at each other and we went, oh, Floss. And I was like, that's my girl. Like, it was just that moment when she was like, I may be gone, but I'm still the boss. And so in that moment, yeah, and Maisie was there the whole time witnessing it, obviously saying goodbye in her own way, which was the best thing I could have ever done. Because in that moment, she got very, very sick. Maisie got really ill from that moment that Floss passed. She wouldn't eat for weeks, very depressed, developed like stomach issues, a lot of stomach issues. And me, the loss of Floss, I didn't want to live anymore. I was like before Floss, I was an athlete, I was a bodybuilder, I was very strict on my food. Like, it wasn't healthy, but I would, train twice a day at the gym. I was very into my body looking a certain way. It didn't come from a health perspective. It just came from an aesthetics perspective, that I wanted to look good because it would make my life better. I don't know what I was wanting out of it. And then I was very strict on my diet and all that kind of stuff. And I had kept that lifestyle moving from New Zealand to Australia. And then when Floss passed, there was something in me that was like, I don't care anymore. I just had no passion for the gym. I didn't care about life. And in all honesty, I just sat on the kitchen floor one day and I was just like, I don't want to be here anymore. And I remember saying to myself, if there's a guarantee that I could go right now, and only animal people will get this, I was sat and I kind of had an agreement with myself. I was like, if there was a guarantee that I could leave Earth right now and be with Floss, I would do it. But I didn't know if I did it that there would be that guarantee. I wanted to just be with her. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, as I looked over, Maisie, my Bichon Shih Tzu, has a really prominent underbite, and I just looked across at the kitchen. She was sitting obviously on the floor with me, just staring at me with the underbite, and I was like, wow, I can't leave Maisie. And Maisie kept me here. Only reason, hand on heart, I didn't have an epiphany. I didn't want to do it. It was just, I had this little being who was hurting too, and I had to be there for her and help her. Well, we're trying to help each other. And this was way before I knew that all my emotions, my animals would feel my emotions. I was so disconnected from any of this type of stuff that I do now. So, and I do really feel for Maisie, because obviously I was so crumbled and so broken and so hurt. I didn't want to give that to. So I was giving that to her at the same time as she was having her own grief. So she was struggling for a really long time, to the point personality that she used to be a dog, and this made me sad until the day she passed. March last year, on the 8th of March is when she passed last year. But from when Floss passed, when Maisie went, Maisie didn't like other dogs anymore. I think it was a form of protecting me. So when any dogs would come up to her on our walks or anything, she would do a bit of a sniff, but if they tried anything more, she would actually try and fight them. And Maisie's personality wasn't that. But at the same time, she had Cushing's disease for a really long time because of the effects of grief and loss. So Maisie she was very brave, and I don't think she ever let on how much she was actually hurting. So that was hard for me to see her connection with her animal her animal family not being the same. And even I did get a cat. And I joked because my cat's Australian and she was a Kiwi, and I was kind of like, oh, you guys don't get on. And she really didn't like him at all. I tried to just get that animal connection so she could still be alpha, and that connection, she wasn't really into that, but that was okay. And this was the first time when I had that moment, I don't want to be here, and I just didn't care for myself anymore, nutrition wise or anything. And it was a very, very dark 12 months, even 18 months, I could say, of my life. Missing someone that was the most unconditional love I'd ever got from anybody. She was my family, and I'm not close to my parents. And it was even like, why can't my, people in my life aren't nice? Why can't, and I was doing this whole bargaining thing, and it's part of grief, I was like, how come my parents who aren't nice to me, why can't they go? Why do Floss have to go? And it was just so hard for me to let go. But the spiritual connection started to come in. So I had a first experience with an animal communicator a few days after she passed. And one of my friends in New Zealand gave me a voucher for an animal communicator. Oh, actually, fast forward before then, sorry. I had 2 experiences with Floss, with an animal communicator. When she had a collapsed trachea, congestive heart failure, something to do with her trachea, and something to do with her dynamic airway disease. Like, she had about 3 major things that were happening that weren't going to kill her straight away, but made life very difficult for her. So she was having trouble breathing, and at night she'd stand on the end of my bed and kind of bark. And I'd be like, what are you trying to do? And I was like, I'd never heard of an animal communicator before. To this day, I have no idea how I found this woman. I don't know. And all I remember, again, was walking down here in Australia. It was one of the main centers here. I had Floss in my arms, and we were walking to this animal communicator appointment. And I was thinking, oh, I've really lost it now. But I wanted answers. I wanted to be able to communicate with Floss. I wanted to help her. And I walked into this lady, and we sat down. It was a really hot day here. And Floss was sitting on my knee, right against my heart. And the lady started to ask her questions. And some of the questions were like, how do you feel today? And Floss was like, I'm so happy that I'm with her, and I'll always be with her. And I was like, oh. And then all of a sudden she goes, I love hearing her heart. And I was like, oh. So I was crying by this stage quite a lot, as I tear up now thinking about it. And then the lady starts laughing, and she goes, oh, okay then. And she says to me, is Floss quite bossy? And I was like, oh, I don't know, but I'm sure she is. And she said, oh, I'm laughing because Floss just asked me, can we put the fan on her? So there was like a freestanding fan. And the lady said, oh, Floss actually has requested that the fan is on her. And I went, oh, for God's sake. So I moved the fan where Floss is in me, and I put the fan right on her. And apparently she says, oh, I like this now. This feels much better. And I was like, oh my God. So that kind of broke. I was like crying and stuff. And then the lady just shared with me that Floss was barking because she was telling me she needed to go to the bathroom. But at the same time, she shared with me that she was a being that when she would sleep, she would go and visit other people and help other people. And then she'd come back to me, and her saying, I'll always be with Barbara, is that no matter where I am in this life or the next life or whatever you believe in, that dog is always with me, always, forever. And that, I think that was that bond that I could never understand why I felt so close to her. Like, I've never had a bond to anyone like that. And it's hard when it's an animal. So I was like, why do I feel so deeply, like, I can't even explain the connection. It's from like within, so connected to this dog. Now that makes sense. And she's like, I'll always be with her. And then one of her lines was, I'll try and live for as long as I can. And I was like, oh, okay. But that was like in March, and she passed away in the September. So she was, she knew that her time was coming. But that was really nice. And then my friend from New Zealand, who didn't know I had this experience, said, oh, my dog passed away a few months ago. You might think I'm a little bit crazy, but I've actually got a voucher for this animal communicator in New Zealand. Would you be keen? And I was like, yeah. She didn't know the morning. So Floss passed away on like a Friday. Saturday morning, I was sitting outside having my coffee, just being just so numb and just so drained from crying so much, and your eyes are itchy and so sore. And I was looking up at the clouds, And I distinctly remember looking at the clouds and seeing Floss's face. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I'm going to have to go and get into a white jacket. Like I'm literally losing my mind. Oh, like I remember seeing her face. And I was like, of course you want to see her. You miss her. Like, you're stupid, Barbara. And then a few days later, I had this animal communicator from New Zealand say to me, it was Floss's time. And she says, oh, Floss has just showed me how she passed. And she said, thank you for choosing. And all this kind of stuff. And then she said, oh, if you ever miss Floss or you get stuck, just look for her in the clouds. And I went, okay, it's a bit weird. And then I actually can't remember all the other things she said. And then one of the other encounters, which I'll never forget, this was me opening up to more, oh, just because Floss, I can't see her, she's still with me. I was still like fighting this. And I was brushing my teeth one day, and you know, when you have a bathroom vanity cabinet on the bottom under the sink, I'm always quite bad. Like I'm a bit of a guy. Like when I brush my teeth, I just leave the door open and I'm like standing in it with the door open and brushing my teeth because I'm going to put my toothbrush back in there. So the door's open, brushing my teeth. I must have been wearing shorts or something. And I feel this massive lick, like this tongue, go all the way up my shin. And I was brushing my teeth and I looked down to go, oh, Maisie. I actually said, Maisie. Maisie wasn't there. And as I was brushing my teeth, and I was like, okay. So then I walk out into the lounge room, and Maisie's curled up in a ball, fast asleep. And I went, and the first thing I said was, Floss, I feel really ripped off. Is that all you're going to give me? Like joking. I was like, seriously, just one lick? You could have hung around for. And that was the moment where I was like, ah, I think she might be with me. I think she might be around. But that was, and to this day, was the hardest time of my life. And that has snowballed into what I do now, where I'm at, is that distinct moment where Floss was earthside and Floss then passed over.
I want to thank you for sharing your vulnerability as well about how you were feeling about not wanting to be here, because I can certainly relate to that. And I've shared that in other contexts as well with listeners, that it's something we don't particularly talk about in our culture, and I think that there's a lot of shame that's often associated with that, but I think the feelings are so real, and so many of us feel like that and don't have an appropriate outlet or community or support system to talk about it. And I think the more that we are honest with those deep feelings of, I don't know how to process what's going on in my life to the point that I just can't take this anymore. It's so important to bring light to that, because if any listeners are going through something like that, you're not alone. You're certainly not alone. That there's so many of us who have had those kinds of experiences. And I love that despite that, and possibly even because of that, there's like this phoenix rising moment for you as well, of coming through that and having another experience of the totality of who you are, and actually seeing through the illusions of this sort of 3D reality, which tells us this is it. And once this is done, it's done, kind of thing. And there's something quite poetic about the fact that you weren't a believer in this before Floss, that she was the one who opened the door for you to start imagining like there is more than this. And it reminds me of a dear friend of mine whose dog, he had a similar relationship with his dog that you had with Floss. And I would label that like a soul dog. Like there are
Yeah.
certain dogs that come into our lives that there is that sort of it's not a languageable kind of connection, and it's not even necessarily a logical kind of connection, but they move us. I believe that they are our teachers in such deep ways. They're part of our personal transformation. His dog was diagnosed with osteosarcoma, and he had previously lost another dog to the same disease, and he had waited too long with the first dog, where to make that kind of call of it's
Yeah.
time to go. And so he was conscious of not wanting to do that same thing with this dog. And he had a really deep bond, and he was doing that kind of connecting with him, like, you need to let me know when it's time. And when it was time, he got this message from his dog about not being heartbroken, but being heartbroken open. And knowing that the dog, like Floss, is with him. He's just changed form, is all. And he communicated it in that way. I'm just in a different form, but I'm always here. And that was really important to my friend's journey as well, because it offered that sense of expansion and it allowed him to be with his grief in a different way and see a kind of purpose to the grief as well. So not denying the feelings, it's not negating the feelings or anything like that, but allowing him to move through it and beyond it and see the wisdom, the gift of the wisdom that this dog shared with him. And he's consequently told me, I've shared it with listeners, he's told it to other people. So this dog's legacy actually transcends that moment. And he became like a real guide for how we move into this space of when our hearts hurt so badly, rather than collapsing under that weight. Is it possible for us to open them up even further to become even more loving, even bigger versions of ourselves? And I feel like that's so much of what Floss was inviting for you and what you've done with your life as a result of that. And I'd love if you could talk a little bit about that kind of transformation that's occurred since her passing.
Yeah. So since her passing, it's to do with relationships for me too. So I was in some really toxic, nasty, horrible relationships with men, and it was a pattern I kept forming. And so I was in therapy when Floss passed, but it wasn't the right therapist. And then when I found the right therapist for me, I did about 3.5 years of therapy. And that was healing my heart with Floss, but also working out these patterns of behavior. And but then in the patterns of behavior, I got to know myself almost like how powerful I was, and the spiritual stuff just kept coming more and more and more. And I couldn't ignore this gift that I have been given. And so about 4 years ago, I was working in this company, and I was just like, one day it was just out of the blue, I'm going to start my own business. And I think I'm going to go study nutrition so I can take better care of myself. And I want it to come from a different place this time, because before it was all just about how my body looked. It wasn't about health. And I would always give my power to other people. So I'd always, pay other people. And I always ignored my intuition. I always ignored, well, what do you want, Barbara? What do you like? How does this make you feel? It was like coming from a place where other people know better than me. Who am I? I'm nothing. And so by losing Floss and feeling like that rock bottom, I was like, well, I need something for my mind. I need something. And I was like, and I don't even know where that's what I mean. I don't even know where this came from now, 4 years ago. I'm going to start my own business, and I'm going to call it Self-Care Studio. I don't even know where that came from. I have no idea where that came from. And I just had this idea of I know what it was like going through a tough time, living in a different country, having no support or the right support. And I just felt like I really want to help others understand their body, understand their mind, understand this intuition that I ignored for such a long time. And in that, Maisie was with me in this journey. And in this, I thought, well, Maisie was just, why doesn't Maisie like be my therapy dog? So then I started thinking, well, I had worked for a therapy practice before as a sales and marketing manager. So I'd actually worked within a therapy environment, and people would come up to me all the time and go, can we come and see you? And I was like, I'm not a therapist. And so that planted the seed. So when I started my business, it was more just a coaching type business about nutrition, helping people understand themselves better. But I just I didn't know what I was doing. Like, obviously I was going in my flow and I was going in my purpose, and it was guiding me. But looking back now, I was like, I don't know what anyway, I'm here today. So it's amazing. I found my way. And as people kept saying, oh, I want you, can I come and talk to you? And I was like, I'm not a therapist. And people were like, oh, I don't mind. I want to see you. And I was like, maybe I become a therapist. And then just before COVID, I started studying, and I became a licensed therapist in January last year. But Maisie had been by my side through the whole 4 years. And even January as a therapist, she was with me till March. And she was my therapy dog. And it was so cool because she had no training or anything. But when people would come in, she'd say hello, and she would be because she was 12 and a half, she was really good in 4 years before that. So she'd been with me for 4 years in this business. She would know the people, should know when to go up to them, when to sit with them. When people would cry, she had this beautiful knack of sitting at their feet and looking up at them. And because she had such a massive underbite, they would look at her and just laugh. She had just this knack of being able to be like, oh, you're really sad. I'm gonna give you this money shot. And that was just her underbite of looking up, and people just laugh and go, oh, Maisie. And so they just really built this bond. It was like the two of us, this tag team that was creating this business. And then when she got sick and I had to make that decision again, I didn't know if I was going to carry on with my business, to be honest, because my studio would hang out there all the time. My studio reminded me of her. I actually have a beautiful hand-painted sketch of Maisie now just above my chair, and it's 3 different faces of her, all hand-drawn, of Maisie's different personalities. So she's in the studio with me now, but I was like, I don't know how I'm going to continue being a therapist. I don't know how I'm going to work. And from March till December, early December, March to early December, I was like, I've had a dog for 17 years, like Floss and Maisie together, overlapping. My heart, I can't do this anymore, and I'm not interested in getting another dog. I've got a cat, sure, but I was like, I can't. My heart can't do this anymore. My finances can't do this anymore. I can't. I'm done. And it was so hard. And again, it was a different form of grief this time, but I still struggled. Like, I was just like, I really don't know. And I remember some of my girlfriends in New Zealand who I talked to every day, they were like, Barbara, I don't know how you're doing so well. You're functioning. You're just getting up every day. That's awesome. And I was just so disconnected. It was a different type of grief this time. It's just so different. I remember her when I took her to the vets. And so she had Cushing's disease for a really long time, and she kept getting bloody UTIs all the time. And she had a few seizures. And then just one day she was lying down here next to the couch, and every time she'd get up, she looked like she was in a bit of pain, but she'd leave like puddles. And then when I took her, the vet took her for some bloods and rung me, and he said, you need to get down here now really quickly. She's got diabetes and her blood levels are so high. I can't believe she hasn't had a stroke. And you need to get down here now, and you need to learn how to administer a needle, and you give Maisie this needle twice a day. So I was like, oh my God. Bless Maisie for a couple of weeks. I would call her into the kitchen and I'd go, Maisie, needle time. And she'd come into the kitchen and she'd just bow her head and she would jump. Like I'd use a new needle every time because I wanted to make sure it was less painful. And I'm not very good with this kind of stuff. It was only me, so I just had to suck it up and do it. And I talked Maisie through it, and she'd just literally bend her head right down and stay so still. And I'd cry every time, and she'd just stay so still. And every time I put the needle in, she'd jump, and it'd make me cry even more. We did that for a couple of weeks, and the vet said, look, Barbara, if you had a loved one that you knew was going to be in a fatal car accident, you could do something about it, would you? And typical me, finding humor in the most darkest moments, I was like, well, it depends who it is. And he's like, Barbara. And I was like, well, and he said, look, I know we've had chats about this before. I know what you'd been through with Floss. And he just said, I know you live alone, and I know Maisie's fits and stuff happen at 2:00 in the morning. And I'm a long way from an hour and a half at least from any 24-hour emergency vets. And he just said where her blood levels are, if she was a 12-and-a-half-year-old dog who just had diabetes, we could possibly manage it. Might be a bit difficult, but we could do it. But she's got severe Cushing's disease. She's on seizure medication. She keeps getting bloody UTIs, and now we've got diabetes. He's like, we're just plugging in all these holes. And I said to him, I think she's the kind of dog that will be fine right to the end. And he said, yeah. You know how some dogs look old or some dogs are like really decrepit? She wasn't. And that was hard for me because I was like, no, she looks fine. But I had to it couldn't be about me. This decision I had to make for little Maisie was for Maisie. It wasn't for me. Because sure, she might have lived for 6 months or a year. Who knows? But I had to make the decision. And he said to me, I said, when do I have to make this decision? He says, with her blood work, he said, within the next 10 days. And I went, okay. So I went home and I just spent like Floss, the week. I was so lucky with both of my girls. I didn't work for a week. I slept on the floor with them for a week. We hung out. We just did everything together 24/7 for about 7 days. So we hung out and I could see her deteriorating. She wasn't moving. She was getting more puffy in the stomach. And I was like, yeah, Maisie's not good. I could just see she just wasn't good. And it was such an interesting time because this time they took her out of the room and put a bandage around her leg. They didn't sedate her again, which again was interesting. They just put a bandage around her leg with like a drain or something attached to her. She came in the room. I had to say goodbye. And he was like, okay, well, let me know. And I was like, again. He's like, okay, here we go. And I remember a friend came with me, and luckily a friend came with me because she captured something that I would never have caught. And it's a nice memory. But I remember I had her in my arms and I just had my head down. And obviously I was crying and I was just like, oh no. Like I was just like, oh, not again. So I was like, I'm really done now. I can't do life anymore. This is so, I have to say goodbye again. I've got nothing left. I remember having Maisie in my arms and I was just hugging her so much. My girlfriend said that again, when the vet put the syringe in, only a little bit had gone in. He looked at her and she looked at him and they knew that Maisie had gone. He only had to again put she was tired, a tiny smidgen, she was gone. So I had her in my arms, not realizing that these two people in the room had already had a secret conversation. So I had her in my arms and then I thought, oh, because I'm strong, and I thought, oh God, I'm like literally squeezing my dog. Like she's probably like, geez, mum, because I was really squeezing her and I thought the first thing in my head was like, oh, Barb, just let her go. But I didn't realize that had many meanings. That voice said, Barb's let her go. I didn't realize in that moment, as I let her go to put her on the table, she just and that freaked me out because A, she just flopped, but B, she nearly fell off the table. So I was like, oh God. And then I got her on the bed. And again, she was wrapped in a purple blanket. Floss was in a purple blanket. She was in a purple blanket. And she was wearing a little sports American, like a baseball t-shirt. Because I was like, I wanted her to go in something. And that was a part of her. Because Floss never had anything. So I had her in this cool little baseball t-shirt. And the t-shirt had O3 on it. And I didn't realize the significance. I had my first cat, Chester, then Floss, and then Maisie, and they were called like the three. When I left my husband, that we were the three amigos. They were, and she had O3 on her t-shirt. And so when she lay there, I remember for a split second going, and I mean a split second, saying to the vet, oh, that was really nice. Like it was, I remember saying these words, that was so peaceful and that's so nice. And I remember looking at her going, oh, it's still Maisie. It's still Maisie. And the vet started to cry and he's like, can I give you a hug? I was like, yeah, can I give you? And it was hard for him. It was so hard for him because he'd been with me through that whole journey. And he said to me, thank you so much for listening to me. And I was like, wow, I had kind of no choice. And he said, Barbara, do you know how many people, because vets can't tell you what to do, but he says, do you know how many people I have a conversation like you and I had the other week? Like a suggestive, like, hey, time is coming. And, he said so many people do not listen. And then they come back and the dog's had a painful death in the middle of the night or something's happened. And he says, I'm so glad you listened to me. Thank you. And I was like, no, thank you. So that was like a really peaceful moment. And then I was speaking through someone that had been on my podcast and she reached out to me because she knew Maisie had passed. And she said, do you mind if I communicate with Maisie? And again, my go-to thing is, yeah, go on. As if. So I'm still then, even a year ago, now I'm not like that, but even a year ago, I was still being tested because I was like, oh, you're going to talk to Maisie? All right, go on. And I kid you not, as I was sitting on this couch, and she said to me, Maisie hadn't connected with Floss yet because it only been a couple of days, but she said, Maisie is so happy and she's running through really long grass and she's so happy. And in Australia, I would never let her run through long grass here because of all the bugs and snakes and just I didn't know what was in the long grass here. So I was a bit of a protective helicopter mum on that front. In New Zealand, sure, but here. So that made me laugh. And then she said, Barbara, and I can imagine when she was younger, her tongue would always be hanging out. And she said her tongue is hanging out. And she said she's around all these butterflies. And she was describing these burnt orange and like a blue butterfly. And I was like, oh, yeah. And I just looked at my window. I went, shut up. And she's like, what? And I said, the colors of the blue and the orange, burnt orange, wasn't a monarch butterfly. Like it was a butterfly I've never ever seen before. And it was like everything. I said, they're at my window. And she says, yeah. Like as if this woman didn't miss a beat. She goes, yeah, Maisie's trying to show you to believe. And then a dragonfly came in and it was the biggest dragonfly I'd ever seen. And I was like, I'm losing it again. I was like, okay, no, I need to trust this. And so the story goes, so many people of my clients would send me links on Facebook. Here's a new litter of puppies, or here's this dog. And I started to open up to the idea. I don't know. I didn't want a dog, and I was so adamant I'm not getting another one. And then one day a client sent something to me, and it was a litter of dogs, and it was a suicidal. And I liked those breeds because it was similar to Maisie. And I was like, and I always wanted a girl again because I like my girl dogs. And anyway, this breeder was like, we've got a litter, and the price was so expensive. And I was just like, right now, coming out of having a dog that was, and when Maisie during COVID, she had TPLO surgeries, that was $5,500, and then she had another surgery. Like I was spending, I think I had shares in the vets by the time I had finished there, literally. I'd be in there every week for something, anal glands or a UTI or Cushing's medicine or hormone test. Like Maisie and I lived there basically. We were very VIPs. Wouldn't have it any other way. Anyway, so I saw this price and thought, they look lovely. I've never owned a puppy before. And I was like, that expense, it's just, no, it's okay. And then again, my friend again messaged me, oh, look, there's 2 left. And I was like, nah. Then there was one girl left. And then she's like, you should just message the breeder. And I was like, oh, what have I got to lose? I messaged her and she said, yeah, there's one left, but there's actually a lady that's interested in seeing it tomorrow. And I went, oh, that's okay. And I just bailed out. I was like, nah, it's not my time. Then the next day, the breeder came back. Oh, that fell through. Do you want to see her? Where do you live? And I worked out I was a 4-minute drive away. And this particular day, I had no clients. It was an admin day. And I was like, oh, no. And she's like, look, I'm home. I'm a midwife. I've just finished a shift. Come down. Do you want to meet her? And I was like, yeah. Oh, okay. But I knew I wanted to sleep on it because puppies are cute. Anyone can think a puppy's cute, but it's a lifelong commitment. And I didn't want to replace Maisie. I had no intention of replacing Maisie. I want to make sure I'm very clear on that. And I met these little dogs. And so her mum's a Shih Tzu and her dad's a toy poodle. And I met this little dog. She's only a few weeks old. And I picked her up. And I kid you not, we locked eyes on each other. And I'm not going to get emotional saying this. And her little eye said to me, hey, mummy, it's me, Maisie. I'm okay. And then it went away. It was like the split second of our eyes meeting. Hi, mummy, I'm okay. And I just went, oh. And the lady said, oh, do you like her? And I was like, oh, yep. So I was just crying. And I put the dog down. I was like, shit. And the lady goes, so you still going to sleep on it? And I said, yeah. I'm still going to sleep on it. And so I'm just going to introduce you to Tully. Sorry, darling, I don't mean to wake you up. So just before Christmas, this little cutie, she was asleep. I literally just woke her up. This little cutie, hang on. I'm going to say hi to the world. We've got to tell them our story, Tully. So this little cutie called Tully came into my life, and when she came into my life, she looked totally different from Maisie. She still looks different from Maisie, but she had really brown head, brown eyes, looked nothing like Maisie. And now she's nearly 8 months old, and she's getting whiter and whiter. And I don't know if her underbite's gonna. Okay,
she's
sorry.
yawning.
Yeah, because I literally woke her up. She's got an underbite. So she's got a small mini, but it only comes out sometimes. She's got a little mini underbite. And how many of my clients say, she was a surprise. I never told any of my clients. So as she was so tiny, as each of my clients came through, they were like, oh my God, who is this? And I was like, this is Tully. And at the moment, she just sits on my knee and listens to everyone. I have some clients that will absolutely love her licking she loves licking people's faces and stuff, but she's learning to be a therapy dog and she stepped into Maisie's shoes. So it is such a beautiful gift that she's going to be able to help people. Yeah, she's been so good at just holding space for people, and also because she's got quite human eyes, if anyone's seen her. And so I have a lot of clients that I'm talking, and then Maisie's obviously, I mean, see, Maisie, I just said it. Tully is doing her own work with the client. And I think it's the energetic work that I cannot see. So I'll pop her back. But she's definitely my first puppy, and yeah, very unexpected. And she has opened my heart and just healed my heart in so many ways. And I feel like, yeah, I can't believe that I would be so lucky to have another dog that is just as loving and cute. Like, you know what I mean? Like the two girls I had was like, oh, I got the best of the bunch. There's no way I could get a dog that had that similar. But I feel like she comes from the same soul family.
Oh, I love that. And I do think that's true. I love that you mentioned about having soul families, because I think that that's a reality, and that we agree to come into one another's lives, all beings, right? So we agree to come into one another's lives as humans, and our dogs do the same kind of thing. And if we're open to it, there's just so much possibility of expansion and growth and alchemizing, like all of this like wonderful stuff that we're meant to experience as spiritual beings having a human experience. And dogs are special for this. They really are.
Mm.
They're different than any animal. And I've mentioned it with you. I've mentioned it before on the podcast, that even from the perspective of evolution, we can't talk about the way that humans have evolved as a species without talking about how dogs have been part of that, and vice versa. We've shaped one another in just so many ways. And I kind of feel, and I'd love to hear your take on this. I feel like at this kind of crux of a moment that we're at in history, where we're being asked to really evaluate who we are, how we want to be in this planet, how we want to steward the planet. There's something so special about the way that dogs are both supporting us with that, but also the way that they're serving as a sacred mirror with like the various diseases that they're getting, both the really loving aspects of a dog, but also the way they're mirroring back to us the kind of ills that we are creating in the world, and asking us to really be present with that and look at, is that how we want to be moving forward? And I wonder, especially since you're working in the capacity of a kind of therapy environment and bringing Tully into that, like what kinds of things do you feel are being mirrored back for the individuals and for us as kind of a human species?
I think one of the main things would be people not living their true purpose or living to what they're meant to be doing. So listening to themselves and listening to, oh, I've always wanted to be an artist, or I've always wanted to do this, but I can't do it, or living a life on that hamster wheel of doing things because that's what society does and what it's expecting. And I feel like so many people are disconnected from that. So from just doing, I think dogs help you find your purpose. Dogs will help you push you to that. But also one thing that I hear a lot from people, especially women, is they don't feel seen. They don't feel noticed or seen, and that can be a number of things. And the household as a mother and doing everything and just not being appreciated, or it could be they don't feel seen at work or within their friends, and so I feel with animals too, especially dogs, they really teach us how unconditional love works. And that was one of the biggest things I learned was no matter how I look, no matter what kind of day I've had, no matter what's going on, my girls will always love me and they're always there for me. And that's kind of like the basis of all my relationships now. I kind of think they have taught me that's what all of us should be teaching each other. So yeah, that's kind of what I see mirrored back, as a lot of people again just label everything with, oh, I'm really stressed or I'm really anxious. And to me, I'm like, that's not good enough anymore. Like, we all want answers, but again, even those answers are so based because everyone's talking about it. It's kind of like, no, go deeper. What what do you want your life like? Dream. Be that little kid again. Dream. What have you always wanted to do? Because that will never leave us. Like, the lessons don't leave us until we learn. So things will keep happening, or things will keep, repetitive patterns will keep happening until you learn. And part of that, I really believe, is us not listening to the child, because we're all perfect when we're born and we all have a purpose and we all know what we're doing, and then that gets taken away from us because of our coaches and our teachers and family or friends or whatever. A boss from work will say, oh, you can't do that. Oh, you want to run this company? You can't do that. And so we start listening, and then obviously it's human nature to feel like, well, I'm not good enough. And then the other thing, oh, this is a really big thing I want people to take away, is certainty. So one thing about animals and spirituality and all that stuff is it teaches you faith, but it teaches you to live in the moment, because dogs are always at their purest form. They just live for now. And that's something that I can see a lot of, is a lot of people that sit in front of me, whether it's online or in person, if I boil down everything they talk to me about and it's like one thing, everyone wants certainty. Everyone wants to know what the right thing to do or what's going to happen, or I've got a plan for the future, but we don't know what that future is. So by us being mindful and being present, I think is one of the biggest things that we can learn from our dogs and our animals.
Oh, I love that. Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I was just reading not too long ago about how one of the biggest things that we're meant to learn on this spiritual path is making friends with uncertainty. Like,
Mm,
really being okay with the not knowing, and how that I mean, it is a struggle for us because we are wired to want to be able to predict to keep ourselves safe, and that's a very natural kind of inclination. But when you truly are in the present moment, when you're not worried about like even 2 minutes from now, right? It's
yes.
right now. Am I okay? Do I have all of my needs met right now? And now, and now. And you keep focusing on that
Yeah.
now moment. It's all of a sudden it's like, well, do I really need to be certain? What is certainty anyway? It's an illusion. It's a total illusion. And I agree with you. Dogs are really great about that, about for teaching us of that kind of thing, because they are unbelievably present. Unbelievably present.
They are very much. I come on, we have to finish off with you here. And so, what Tully and I are on this journey now together. Oh, just love her so much. Tully and I'll just get her comfortable. She's like, Mum. She's getting so long, everyone, because I've had her since a puppy. Oh, I don't know what to do with all her long body anymore because it's so long. So this is Tully and I,
Oh,
and what we're going to be on this journey, aren't we? And because I've never been a puppy owner, and I know the amount of crap really and I didn't know any better, which is okay. I've come to terms with it. But my other dogs, what I used to feed them, and I'm so confused. And even as a human nutritionist, I really want to learn how to care for Tully. I know the type of health conditions that her breed gets, whether it's like luxating patella, joint issues, skin issues, and obviously with adrenal like Cushing's and stuff. So I'm very aware these type of breeds what health issues. So she's nearly 8 months old, and I'm so excited that we're going to be working with you
I am
to
so
learn
excited.
about fresh food, to learn about how to. I mean, she's the first dog I've ever had that loves green bean, like frozen green beans. She gets excited. Carrots. My other dogs literally Floss. Again, if we go back to her, I would give her a bit of broccoli and she'd look at me and she'd look me in the eyes and go, she'd do like two chews and then she'd go, "Puh." And she literally would go, like make a noise when she used to spit it out. And then when I got her, I actually went to puppy preschool, and a puppy preschool was simple as this is how this nutrition journey, I think that's how we found you,
Mm.
is at puppy preschool. The vet nurse had a list of the foods that you can feed dogs and not feed dogs. I was like, this is silly, I know. And then she started to say like fruits and stuff. And I'd never thought of giving my dog fruits and berries or they scare you so much that they can't have grapes and garlic and chocolate and all this stuff. And I was a really late comer to knowing that like ham was bad for, like toxic for dogs and all that stuff. Um, so when I saw that chart at puppy preschool, that was been in my mind. She's been on the food that the breeder gave us, but now I'm like, I want more. I want more for her. And then I started to go down the rabbit hole of all the different types of like grain free or fresh or this. And then you just came into our lives, which is so awesome. Because at the same time, I'm at the same dilemma where I keep wanting to call him Maisie, where Tully is, I'm at in my life. So now I kind of feel like I've still got more room to go, but now I want to start taking better care of myself. And obviously I want to walk the walk. I know nutrition, but how does this look now for me? And I feel like Tully and I are going down this path together of health, spirituality, vitality, and really learning what's going to serve us both. I think we're kind of both on that same page. And that's why I've got her, so we can be, pillars in our community to help people. And then obviously the healthier we are, the more hours we can do. And also on an energetic level, her and I, the amount of people that we talk to in a week and what they share with us is very heavy energy. So we need to look after ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that, to your point, that that's the only way that you can serve. You have to start with yourself. It's that whole notion of putting the oxygen mask on yourself first in order to be able to be helpful. And I love that. I'm so excited to be doing this journey with you because it's really fun from my end of things as well. But I love that kind of mirroring because that's what it's been like for Lucky and me as well. And I've mentioned on the podcast before how part of what I want to debunk as well in the fresh feeding community, they're particularly the raw feeding community. There's this whole thing of like Instagrammable, beautiful dog bowls with all of these like exotic body parts and all this stuff. And the hashtag, my dog eats better than me. And I think that is just so problematic because, like you're saying, we both need to be taking care of ourselves and we
Yeah.
need to look at like what is nourishment, like you were to your point of like mind, body, and soul. It all plays together. The energetics of the food you're eating, the energetics of the work that you're doing, that you're surrounded, all of that impacts us. And the beautiful thing about dogs, and this has been my experience with Lucky, is because they just get in your heart like nothing else, and you are willing to do anything for them, for the most part, right? You will take those steps for your dog, and in doing that, you automatically start taking those steps for yourself. And I think it's
Mm,
it's just so beautiful, and it becomes this sacred act, to be totally honest. Like that's how I describe the way that I put Lucky's bowl out every day. Like I bless his water every day. Like I'm incorporating all of that into how I'm caring for him and caring for myself, so that all of those little moments in your day, when we're talking about being really present to the now, your lens around that is just so different, and it turns all of the little minutia of your day into magical moments, into rituals, into ceremony where you feel so present, if you so engaged and enlivened with your life, like in love with your life in a way that I didn't feel like before. And that is one of the biggest gifts that he's given me, is he's transformed all of the stuff that I would try to get through as quickly as possible before in my life,
yeah.
right? He's transformed those very things into the actual magic. And that is just such a gift, such a gift.
Yeah. 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 I really understand that. And I think, even as a nutritionist within this, I'm still so confused about what's best for me. And that's what I'm diving deep in, is to really like listen to. I'm being so heavily programmed with such a heavy training background and a heavy diet culture background, weighing my food and all of that kind of stuff. that's the life that I no longer want to go to, but I'm really in that I don't know where to go because that's all I know. I know how to eat junk food all the time, or I know how to eat ridiculously like I was a bodybuilder. And when you look like that, you have to eat a certain way. There's only one way because it's a sport and that's what you do. But you can't do that forever. So it's kind of like my brain didn't know it can either go this way or this way.
Mm-hmm.
And then even as a nutritionist, it's very, again, it's always easy to support other people and help people, but when it's through you,
Yeah.
it's always very difficult. So I think by having Tully, like we're both role models for each other, to be like this final component of kind of really looking after giving, healing my body, healing that side of myself. And that really comes down to debunking this whole subconscious conditioning programming from a child that I've had from my parents, that the only thing that matters in life is how you look.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've worked so hard to uncover that, where that's come from. I'm still doing that now with my mentor, but I'm working through it. And it's so interesting that everything comes from within. And I
100%.
had no idea that it's that from within. And then that goes further down to your purpose and why you're here. And I've just made so much growth. But I know this nutrition side is, and also it's really important to have people in your corner, a community. Like I know you're really big. That's why you started your podcast and stuff in your community, is to have the right people. What I've learned recently is everyone has so you and I have an energetic tie. And then someone you can walk past at the supermarket, just briefly, you've got an energetic tie with them. Someone that drops something in front of you and picks up and gives it to you and says, "Oh, have a great day." That's the energetic tie. So I'm learning all about this stuff. And sometimes people are in your life for a little bit. Sometimes people are in your life, but it's all happening for a reason. And it's way bigger than what we think it is. So the moment of us talking on here is way bigger to help someone else or to help. That's what we're here for. But I think this nutrition thing is, you look at all the health things, you look at all the confusion, you look at we're eating more food, and it's me too, like I'm just being honest, eating more food than we ever have done before, but we're still hungry. But when you actually look at it, none of it is real food anymore. Same with the dogs. I was horrified to look at when she was a puppy and I was reading all the backs of the packets, because obviously now I'm a nutritionist. So I did that not for me. I will be doing that for me. I've gone through phases in my life, but for her, I was like, right, everything. I was so strict. I'm going to read everything. And everything I would turn around, I was like, what? The second or third or fourth ingredient was sugar. It wasn't even like sugar has like 500 different names, like it's ridiculous, or 50, I can't remember. But it wasn't even something that was hidden as sugar. It actually said sugar on dog food or dog treats. And I was like, oh my God. Like I had to give myself grace for the other two. I was like, oh my God, I used to give them smackos all the time. Or I used to be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then that got me thinking of, well, what am I supposed to feed her? And then everything I'm looking at, even when I'm looking at the ingredients that say it's natural or it's healthy, it's not. When you actually look at the specific ingredients and the order of the ingredients, and obviously the order is, it goes from more to less. So obviously the ingredient that's the first thing can say it's like a chicken meal, but it might say chicken 43%. Well, that's not chicken, in my opinion. What the hell is all the other percentages? And then what are all these big words that I don't even know what they mean? And that's going into my dog's body.
Yep. I know it's frightening. And the thing is, like, once you start looking at it, you can't unsee it. You really can't. But the great thing is that there's more and more people who are pushing for transparency around that are trying to understand, that are trying to claim back their own sovereignty when it comes to their own health and their dog's health. And I think too, along this journey, which is something that's important, is we, we in the dog world, in the dog nutrition world, we talk about how all dogs are individuals. So there is no one way to feed dogs. There are guidelines like there are for humans, right? But every single dog is an individual. And so you work with the individual in front of you. And it's the same for us. And one of the gifts that has come out of that for me as well is really recognizing my own individuality. And I feel like similarly to you, I'm still on this journey for myself. And I come from a background with a really dysfunctional relationship to food and having suffered from eating disorders. And something that has been helpful for me as I've gone through all of this was I wish I could remember the title of the book, the author, anything about it, but there's one passage from this book that was so helpful for me early on in my journey of recovery from dysfunctional eating. And the author was talking about how when you suffer from something like eating disorders, and it's not just eating disorders, I'm using this as an example, but you end up becoming so disconnected from yourself that
Yeah.
you don't even really know what feeling hungry is like, or feeling full is really like, or what you really want, or you're not engaged with your body in a normal way. And I remember this author saying, especially for those of us who suffered from bulimia, where we had this real fear that like if we kept it in, we were just going to get so fat, or whatever it was that we associated with it. And the author was saying, if you crave chocolate chip cookies, if you have that sense that you want to eat a chocolate chip cookie, don't shame it. Don't put any kind of meaning onto that. Allow yourself to eat the chocolate chip cookie, and allow yourself to eat the chocolate chip cookies for as long as you actually feel that you want them. And all of a sudden you'll notice your body will be like, oh my God, too many chocolate chip cookies. We're done. I kind of feel like broccoli. And the
Mm,
whole point of it was to reestablish a communication pattern with your body, and to recognize and to actually to trust your body, to trust that your body knows what it needs. And I talk about this a lot with dogs, that this is one of the things that they can teach us, and what Lucky has been teaching me. They are fantastic at being able to sense, whether that's I think it's a combination of things, through either smelling or being energetically drawn to the things that they need. That's part of why dogs eat grass, for example, while they'll seek out certain foods, why they will avoid certain foods at certain times. They know what their bodies need at any given time, because they don't have this weird dysfunction, right? Like they don't have any of that kind of conditioning, the shaming or anything
yeah.
like around the body. And so much of this practice for me of engaging Lucky as an individual has challenged all of my fears around my own body, all of the disconnections I've ever felt around my own body, all of the shoulds that I've given my own body, and brought them very gently and very lovingly under the microscope for me to say, and is that true? And is that true? And is that true? And that has been an incredible gift, that kind of unfolding that I wouldn't have necessarily experienced in another way if it hadn't been going down the route of caring for my dog and seeing, what does he actually need right now? What does that actually look like? And everyone's saying, oh, raw is the best. Sometimes
Yeah.
he doesn't do great on raw, so he does gently cooked. And having to look at, so where are my fears around that? For example, like, am I not doing this well enough? Am I not a good dog mom? All of that kind of conditioning. And it's such a gift, because he offers me a really soft and safe way to look at that, and to integrate that, to lovingly hold that within myself and integrate it, rather than shaming it or trying to get rid of it, or just not shove it under the rug, any of that kind of stuff. So it's a beautiful journey that you and Tully are on. And I think it's going to be so much more than, now I know how to feed my dog. That's the entryway for it. It's going to be a
Yeah.
huge journey. I'm
Yeah.
excited
And
for
it's
you.
something that I want to empower myself, that I still haven't found my vet yet either. So I think that's part of the journey for us, is when we find a vet that's good fit for us.
Mhm.
I want to be able to have all the knowledge in the world I can have, so I can make good decisions for Tully, in our life together. yeah, and I just want her to just be the best that she can be. And I think I can give that to her. I can honor her and give that to her, and I can give that to myself for the first time, because I just had so many rules. Still now, these rules are conditioned for years and years and years about our bodies, how we look, how we should be looking, what beauty is, food, and just this whole culture. And I know for me, like personally, I've lived a life wanting to be in a body that's a particular size that I actually can't physically be. And so that's been a really hard thing for me to understand, is for years and years and years, I would have photos, and especially when I was doing bodybuilding, I'd have photos of women that I in America that I aspired to and I wanted to look like. I looked like on their level, but I was just a different body type. And a trainer once could see one day I was beating myself up. And he said, please show me what photos you're looking at. And I showed him. And he said, oh, Barbs. And I said, what? And he goes, he didn't even try. And I remember at the time, this crushed me. This crushed my soul, because I really admired him and he was my trainer. And we were getting ready for a show. And he says, how do I put it? And he goes, if you didn't eat or drink anything for 2 years, you still wouldn't look like that. And I was so crushed. And he goes, you need to delete those photos. And then he showed me photos of women that I could look like. And I was like, oh, they're fat, they're gross. Oh, no. That was so hard. Looking back, I was like, they're not pretty. They're not this. They're not, because that was how I was conditioned so much. And so I was living a life so externally to get validation and acceptance and to whatever. And then even when I did look as close as I could look to what I wanted, I wasn't happy. I didn't feel amazing. I was still chasing the thing. I was still like, oh, got to lose this or got to do that. And if someone, like, even people, I guess, wanted to shake me and be like, oh my God. Like, and that's what I mean, is that was so conditioned into me that even when I had it, it wasn't my purpose and I wasn't happy and I wasn't healthy. And so that's my story around like how I give myself nutrition and how I care for myself, was acknowledging, again, you said everything's individualized, and that's right. We all have this bio individuality. We can't eat the same stuff. We can't live the same life. We all have a fingerprint, and that fingerprint is how we need to sleep, how we need to care for ourselves, how we need to do everything. So now I'm starting to honor that fingerprint. I'm like, oh, okay. And things like, I've learned all about histamine foods as well. So for people that, aren't too sure what histamine foods are, is I thought, okay, maybe a year ago, I was like, I'm going to clean up my food and eat clean. And I was eating a bucket load of spinach and pumpkin, which you would think that are very healthy. And then I started to get like a really swollen eye. My eye started to feel really swollen. And then I had worked out, I found what foods were histamine foods, and I looked at the list, and everything I was eating was on this list. I was like, oh, okay. And then it's obviously not how you eat it, but it's how it's prepared. Like you said, for Lucky, sometimes it's gently cooked, sometimes it's not. For me, it's learning about the foods, but also learning, okay, right now I probably need this gently cooked, or I need to go to full cream, or I need to do this and that, and slowly take the time to look at ingredient or food type by food type and document it and write it down, because we can't remember things, and just say, how does that make me feel? Like, just slow things down. And just, I always go back to those caveman days, and I think our bodies haven't changed and our brain hasn't changed, and we're not eating like they used to. And that's why we're feeling all this discomfort. It's because that's when we eat all the stuff that's been processed, and our body's like, oh, can I eat something now? And it's like, I might have just had a meal from Burger King, say, like Hungry Jack's or Burger King or McDonald's or any of those food chains. So you can have a burger meal and then like an hour later be hungry again. And that's the diet brain going, well, you just ate, piggy. Like, you shouldn't be hungry. You've just had this. But your body's like, that wasn't food. I actually don't know what that was, but that wasn't food. Now I'm hungry. that was just something that was foreign that I digested, but I don't know what that was. So give me some real food. And that's hard for our diet brains to understand because we're like, oh, calorie restrictive. We just ate that. So we have to ignore our hunger cues.
Right. Right. So we learn to ignore ourselves and our own voice.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. Barbara, this has just been so wonderful. Thank you for sharing your story because I think it's going to be really inspiring for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people are going to be feeling like they are seen and heard through your words. It's just so beautiful. Where can people find you if they would like to know more about your story or working with you or your beautiful podcast? Where are some good places we can point people to?
I think the main places I hang out on Instagram a lot, which is SELF underscore care, CARE underscore studio. So self-care studio on Instagram. On there, I also have a link to my podcast, which is called the Studio Chat Podcast, and that is found on Instagram. And that's all on Spotify. So I think I'm up to 109 episodes on there. So there's something to do with nutrition or osteopath or naturopath or like yourself. You know, you've been a guest on my podcast.
Yes.
Incredible. So I've got that. And then obviously on my website, which is selfcarebybarbrathompson.com.au. And I'm starting to get clients from all around the world. So before it was just Australia and New Zealand, but I'm starting to get inquiries and people just asking about things from overseas. So yeah, just come and say hi if anything resonated in this chat. You wanted to say hi, you wanted to share with me your story about your dog or the spiritual connection, like anything, I'd more than happy to have a chat and connect with you.
Oh, I love it. I will leave all those links in the show notes as well. So if you didn't catch that, you can click on it from there. Barbara, I wanted to ask you one final question that I ask all of my guests. And that
Yeah.
is, what do you feel that your dogs have taught you about what it means to be human?
What have my dogs taught me what it means to be human? Oh, that's a really good question. To honor myself and be exactly who I am, warts and all. That's what they've taught me. They've definitely taught me everything about unconditional love. I cannot, tell you how much they've told me. And they've shown me what I've never had love before from a human or anyone. So these animals that I've had in my life are the first time that I felt what love feels like, and it's really nice, pure love. That's why it's so hard to let go of. In the physical form, it's so hard to let go. So they've taught me that, but they've taught me, and because I'm a soul that I'm learning that I have so much love to give, which annoys me sometimes because I have the capacity of so much love. Where am I supposed to give it to? And so by having animals, they absorb it, but they teach me that it's okay to be me. It's okay to love hard. And just the whole unconditional. And like, you look at your dog, if someone's got a dog now or have had a dog, you think of their little personality. Do they ever shy away of who they are? No, they don't. They're like, this is me. Lucky's the same, like, this is me. I love playing with socks, or I love doing this. And so they're really fully present. So they teach us to be, here we are, here's our personality, take it or leave it. Yeah.
Such a gift. Such a gift. Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate you being here with us.
And thank you for just, again, I'm always like honored to speak to you because obviously you're in Mexico. So I always get excited. I just think that's in this day and age, it's so cool that we can connect. Doesn't matter. Connection and community can be a conversation like this, or hearing a podcast in your ears like this when you feel alone. Hearing someone that's been through something similar or something you can relate is really big. So I want to thank you for having a community that allows people like me to come on here, and it's normal to talk about stuff. It's normal to talk about the hard things and to be vulnerable and not be fake. Like, the world is full of people that are just deeply unhappy and have a facade on that they're living this life that they're so happy. And I'm sorry, it's not the case. And with you and your community, you're so vulnerable and you share your story and you give permission for other people to be themselves. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for doing the same in your world as well. So much
Yeah.
gratitude, my friend.
Thank you.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode with Barbara Thompson and her sweet puppy, Tully. If you would like to connect with Barbara, you can find her on Instagram at self_care_studio or on her website, selfcarebybarbarathompson.com.au. And don't forget to check out her podcast, The Studio Chat. I was so honored to be her guest. I've left all the links in the show notes. And don't forget, if you'd like me to do a short episode on a particular topic related to nourishing your dog or yourself, mind, body, or soul, for my upcoming series, then just send me a message on Instagram at Mystic Dog Mama. And if you're interested in taking advantage of one of my canine nutrition consultations that are opening up, message me on Instagram. One final note before I let you go. This episode was sponsored by Aspirationary, which, in full transparency, is another project of mine where we create books, notebooks, and stationery to help you become all you aspire to be. You can check out our shadow work and moon magic journals and workbooks, as well as our popular My First Period tracker for young girls and tweens, on Instagram at Aspirationary. That's spelled ASPIRATIONERY. Okay, until next time.